for records. Okay, let's get started. As I mentioned in the email, tonight we'll talk about just informational stuff. I'm going to provide you with as much information as I can and some ideas, and just some things to start thinking about. And then next week, we will talk about specific nutrition plans for meaning nutrition plans for training and nutrition plans for race day, depending on the distance of your race, depending on different intensities, whether it's in training or racing, you'll have different nutritional needs. So that's also important to know. So we'll get started with the informational piece. How many of you have been out on your bikes recently in these last nice days? A few people. Mm-hmm. So, and it's kind of hard to remember on those early season rides, what to wear, what to drink, what to eat, what to bring, right? It's all new again. So I wanted to kind of help remind you of some things to start focusing on. We have a few more people popping in. Hi, guys. So I wanted to talk about a few things that I want you to start focusing on in training that will be helpful for when race day comes. And even if you aren't racing this season, it will be helpful, or your race isn't until later. You're basically practicing just to become more efficient, more metabolically efficient, a more efficient athlete overall. And your fueling and pacing is something that you can always work on, no matter what level of athlete you are, to have a more successful training session and or a more successful race day. So 2 things you can control, right? Like I said in the email, you can control your fueling to a certain degree. I mean, unless you drop your things or there isn't anything on the course, and those are just nightmares come true. But to a certain degree, you control your fueling and you control your pacing. And I tell you what, most of the failures, and I hate to use that word, but most of the failures will say when people don't reach their optimal goal, when people don't reach their race day goal, is because of lack of attention to one of those 2 things. You may practice it in your training. You may practice it and your training goes really, really well. And you have your nutrition plan all figured out and you have your pacing plan all figured out, but something happens on race day. Whether you think for some reason that day you're going to be faster, or you just don't feel like eating, or you just don't feel like drinking, and that's not going to work. So a reminder again, if you can stick to those plans because they worked and we figured them out in your training, then you'll have a more successful day, whether it's training or racing. So in winter training, we generally are doing, an hour to an hour and a half, depending on when your races are. There are some of those earlier season big rides or triathlons or runs, marathons, half marathons, or in Jenny's case, an ultra distance run, where you are taking in more training nutrition and more calories, and you're paying a lot of attention to that. But generally speaking, when we're doing like the run series around town and we're riding on Zwift, we're not really worrying too much. We might do an electrolyte drink or maybe some kind of a snack if you're hungry because you haven't had a meal in a while. So we're not really focusing on that, right? In the winter, we don't really need to, because for an hour and a half workout, 40-minute workout, 30-minute workout, you don't need to be taking in a lot of calories. Again, maybe electrolytes if you're dehydrated for some reason, or if you feel like you need something, then an electrolyte drink is always a great option. So now I'm saying it's time to start focusing on those things. And a couple of races are coming up for you, for the local people. There's Rookies and Rockstars is May 1st, and that's a great race just to kind of dust off the cobwebs and get out there and go through the swim, bike, run sequence and kind of see how it feels again. So it's a great flat race, pool swim, which is nice. And then the St. Louis Triathlon is coming up after that. So it really is time to start focusing on those things. And even on those shorter races, I like to pay some attention to nutrition and fueling, because it really can help or hurt your race day performance. So some of the products, there are so many products out there that are made for what we do, that are made for our training and made for our racing. All of the gels, all of the chews, the Honey Stinger chews, the Cliff Shot Blocks, all of those things all the different drinks, all the different waffles now. There are so many different waffles and waffle flavors you can choose from. And then bars. Do you really need to eat a bar when you're training or racing? And then a couple different kinds of drinks. So they're not only the electrolyte drinks, but you see a lot of people using different carbohydrate drinks like Infinite or UCAN, or so those are more in the triathlon world. Lawrence can't get into the meeting. I'm not sure why. Let me just send him the link again real quick. Sorry guys, let me just send this real quick to Lawrence. I don't know why it's not working for him. Let's see. Zoom, let's see if this works. Okay, so it might be a time, and you can talk to me about it, you can talk to your training buddy about it, but now is the time to purchase a few of those items, purchase a few different gels that sound good to you. None of them are really delicious. Sometimes they can taste like the best thing in the world when you're really hungry on that ride or run. But finding a brand that you like and a flavor that you like, there are like Humagels are more of a natural option. So if you're kind of a more healthy type of eater, they're made with a base of chia seeds, and so they have some real fruit in them, so they're a little bit healthier, and a lot of people like them. They might be easier on your stomach than the starch that's in the regular like goo gels and things like that.
Sally, what was the name of that?
Huma, it's Huma. Most of the running stores and Swim Bike Run, I believe, has Huma. Most of them most of those stores will carry that one, and Goo. Goo's not a bad product. It works really well. It's definitely made for what we do, but some people can't stomach it. It's a little bit stickier. I don't know. And then the one that I like is SIS. It's Science in Sport. You can get it on Amazon. You may find one you like that, Helen. Yeah, that's a good one. And really the big reason I tried it is because it only has 1 gram of sugar, and I'm a big proponent of that. And then what I really liked about it was it's a very light flavor. And then there's one that's not light. I think it's the one with caffeine. It's some kind of a cherry flavor. It's not very light, so it's kind of a strong flavor, but it's light and it has a little bit of water in it. So if you find yourself in between aid stations in a race, you can take that in easily without having to chase it with water. So I like those. I really like those things about it. But the fact that it doesn't have sugar is nice. And I'll talk a little bit later about the reasons why I choose to use training products without sugar. Jenny, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I put my question in there. That other one, I hadn't heard of the chia seed, whatever fruit. I just thought with that, wouldn't that be kind of, make things happen?
Right. So, and yes, good point. So, and that's another great reason to experiment with things like that in your training, so you don't have any emergencies on race day. And maybe you experiment with that on your indoor training ride or something. If your stomach is more sensitive to fiber, then especially, yeah, with chia seeds and real fruit, if you normally don't eat healthy, then I wouldn't recommend that. Your body might go into shock, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. And all of these gels have electrolytes in them. That's really the main reason. You're taking them in for electrolytes and calories. It's a nice shot of about 100 calories and a little dose of electrolytes that goes well with the electrolytes that you have in your drink. So you're getting kind of a double bonus there. But yeah, good point, Jenny. And also I have down here in my notes, there are some other foods you can train with. The waffles are tasty. Some people like them, but I'm telling you, that's an overload of sugar in your system. And again, we'll talk more about that. Using bars in training, that's fine too. Some of the bars have a lot of protein. I like protein, but if I'm doing a long ride, protein can kind of upset your stomach. So you just have to be careful to balance that with the right amount of carbohydrates. So, and some of the bars like Clif bars, which You may or may not like Cliff bars. There's some of the bars out there, and Kind bars, I think those are great. But those already have a nice balance of carbs and protein. But just a pure like protein bar, I would stay away from that for training nutrition, just because of the GI issues it can cause. And then the carb drinks that I talked about, those will pack in a lot of calories. So you could get a few hundred calories in a drink if you want to. But again, you're not going to need that. You can absolutely gain weight in training. Some people may have that goal to gain weight, but if we eat as much in training every time we go to train as we will on race day, then we could absolutely gain weight, and you could just get sick to your stomach. So we're practicing using these products at a lower level of calories in our workouts that are a little bit longer. And I'll go into the distances and lengths of the workouts where you want to start incorporating those. And other foods to experiment with that are non-specific training products would be trail mix. That's one that I've used that I like. But again, like Jenny said, the fiber might be a concern. If there are raisins or craisins in there, that may not work for your stomach. So that may not be a great idea for you. Again, you might know right away and you might say, no way, I can't eat that. Pretzels are great. And I know a couple of people, Jenny is one that likes to use the pretzels with peanut butter. So you get a nice little balance of carbs and protein and fat and some great salt. So those are great. They're a little bit hard to chew if your mouth is dry.
And no fiber.
Yeah, no fiber. And they taste really good when you're drinking all these fruity things. And if you're taking in fruity gels, that's a nice salt to offset. And again, those are nice to take on a long ride, just to have with you in case you get hungry. I have potatoes on my list. So has anybody ever tried the Alan Lim potato recipe? Alan Lim is a professional cycling coach, or he coaches the professional cycling groups, teams. And he has a recipe for potatoes to take on rides and things like that. So they basically are little potatoes you wrap in foil and put salt and pepper and butter on them, and you eat them while you're riding. How delicious is that? I have not tried it because, I mean, just to cook a meal is a big deal, right? Yeah, so Chris says Fig Newtons. I have that on my list as well. A lot of people really love Fig Newtons, but yes, the fiber is an issue. You can try them. I mean, I've heard some people say they make them really gassy, and I don't think that that's something that any of us want on a long training day or on a long on a race, right? So try them. It's great potassium and great calories, and they taste good. Yeah, Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, a number of the guys from the old days, before there was a plethora of snacks and food, we only had power bars, and they would eat things like Fig Newtons, and that seemed to be good on long rides.
Okay, yeah, and that's a good point. I know a lot of people who like Fig Newtons, or they'll even eat just dried figs, which, yeah, you may as well just eat prunes, right? In my mind. So, but great potassium, which is an electrolyte that our bodies need when we do these long events. And I say long events, it could be an Olympic distance triathlon. It could be when you're outside doing a hilly 2-hour ride. That's definitely or possibly a need for calories. Jenny, did you know your hand is still up? Do you have another question?
No, I do not.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you weren't waiting. Any other ideas? So we have pretzels, like plain pretzels or peanut butter pretzels. But and I think those are all great options. But again, those products that they make are specific to our needs, but avoiding the sugar is definitely a good idea. And because too much sugar can definitely lead to an upset stomach by the time you get to the run, if it's a triathlon that you're doing. So let's talk about how much of these things that we need. So generally speaking, when you're on the bike ride, and we'll just talk about training first, when you're on the bike ride, the rule of thumb is 1 bottle per hour. And I like the big bike bottle. I do 1 of those per hour on a typical day. Sometimes when it's a little bit cooler out, it's hard to get yourself to drink that much. But generally speaking, one bottle, and it could be water. Sometimes I'll bring a bottle of water and sometimes I'll bring a bottle of electrolytes. Or if it's a little warmer, then I might bring 2 bottles of electrolytes. And then generally when we do a long ride, there's a bathroom stop with a Quick Trip or something where you can refill and get a Gatorade or whatever you may need for another electrolyte drink, or bring your own if you prefer to stay away from that sugar and high fructose corn syrup, which I would recommend staying away from. But so generally speaking, again, about 100 calories per bottle. And on a 2 to 3 hour ride, that might be plenty, depending on what you ate for breakfast and how hungry you are. So if you just grabbed a cup of coffee and ran out the door and went to your group ride, that's going to be a 3 hour ride, then yeah, you're going to have to make up for that because you didn't take in any calories, where normally I would say if I was going on a 3 hour ride, I would eat probably either a couple of eggs and a piece of toast or a bowl of oatmeal with some protein in it and some fruit in it. So I would get a good satisfying breakfast in before I would leave, in plenty of time before I would leave, and then be able to fuel like this throughout. But if I didn't eat, I might add another 100 calories to each hour at least, because you're going to start out hungry and in a deficit. So, that's also something to experiment with. I'm just kind of telling you, I keep saying generally speaking, because that's really what I mean. Generally speaking, this works for me, but it may not work for you. Some people can't eat breakfast in the morning before they go train. It makes them sick to their stomach, or they have GI issues. I say get up a couple hours before you're going to leave so you can take care of any of those issues and make sure you get the calories in that you need. So, but figuring out what works for you, or if you're the type that just jumps in the car and eats breakfast on the way, good luck to you. And maybe you have a strong GI system and that's not going to be an issue. But again, usually if it's a group ride, we have a bathroom stop, or we can find something. We can find a bathroom stop in an emergency, right? So that is general rule of thumb on a ride that's over 2.5 to 3 hours. I would add another probably 100 to 150 calories per hour. And that's more for insurance. So if the ride ends up being a little more intense than you planned, you're trying to keep up with your buddies and you weren't planning on riding that hard, you're definitely burning more calories at higher intensities, or it ends up being a hillier ride than you thought. And so there's more intensity there and you're going to be burning more calories. So just make sure always on a group ride or on a long ride by yourself, just to bring extra. You never know. And bring money or a debit card or something like that in case there's a Quick Trip that you can stop at to get some more calories if you need them, just as insurance. And then let's see. So that's about all I have for the bike. And then for the run's a little bit less. So same idea. If you already had breakfast, and when I go for a run, I would probably do a little bit lighter breakfast and then make up the calories on the run. And on the run, probably 100 calories per hour. And you could get that in your electrolyte drink. If you're doing a long run of a couple of hours, then, and not everybody needs to do runs that are a couple of hours that are on this call, but if you are that person, then you might add some extra calories as well, so that you have a little bit of a nice base of nutrition in your body and you can sustain your run effort. And that's going to also depend on you and your experience. So you're gaining experience in your training using these products and using these maybe not these amounts of calories. We can talk about what amount of calories you might need, but you starting with an amount of calories that makes sense, and then adjusting as you go, and adjusting, like I said, for different intensities. Some people can't, and you don't really need to eat during the run. If it's like an hour-long run, if you're really hungry, an electrolyte might do the trick, or just a gel might do the trick. So just some thoughts on that. Same products for running. I would use the SIS gels. I like those because they don't have sugar. And let's talk a little bit about that. So using less sugar in training and racing. I've talked in the past about metabolic efficiency and eating and training to allow your body to burn more fat as fuel, because that makes you much more efficient, metabolically efficient, and a more efficient athlete because you require fewer calories to hold your effort for a longer period of time. And you do that through zone 2 training, which we've talked about at length. Zone 2 training can teach your body to burn fat as fuel. And then also eating, snacking, and meals, and training nutrition and race nutrition, balancing out your carbs and protein, and not taking in a lot of sugar. Even though I say I'm a proponent of these products because they're what we really need. Yes, on race day, I use them. And in some training, I use them because it works for training. But I don't need as many calories, so I don't need as many gels or as many chews or whatever, or I use the products that don't have the sugar, so I don't need to worry about blood sugar swings. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure that's making sense. So another example of training to help your body burn fat is doing an indoor ride. And I say indoor ride because it's safer if you're not used to doing this. So an indoor 90-minute ride with just water and maybe electrolytes. You could do electrolytes. So some of the electrolyte products don't have a lot of sugar or no sugar. I have some that have no sugar, like that gel. So, but even trying to do it without calories, so that will help teach your body to burn fat as fuel. And that's best, in the morning when you haven't had breakfast yet, doing your workout before you have any calories. And you can have coffee or whatever, that's fine. It actually is great to have like coffee with a little bit of oil in it. So there's coconut oil you can use, or ghee, which is like a butter. It's some kind of a fancy butter, but it's good. It's really good for you in a way. It's got some saturated fat, but a little bit of it is good for you. And in this case, it's putting fats in your body so that when your body reaches for calories, it's going to find fat in your quick carbohydrate stores, your quick energy stores, I'll say, and get used to burning that fat as fuel. Isn't that interesting? So, and that's what we want, is our body to easily reach for the fat to burn as fuel. Because what happens is if you're doing a 90-minute bike ride, let's say, and you use up your glycogen stores, you're going to try this. You're going to try not to eat any calories, just going to drink water. And you are a sugar burner. Your body is used to reaching for sugar because that's kind of how you eat. Maybe you eat more carbohydrates and sugar and you train with sugar. So your body's going to reach for those quick carbohydrate stores from that breakfast that you had this morning. And then boom, all of a sudden you've gone through the 200 let's just say you've gone through the 500 calories that are in that quick carbohydrate store. They're gone. So now your body has to reach for the fat to burn. And it's not used to doing that because you're usually feeding it sugar. So it's used to finding that sugar again and finding that sugar again and finding that sugar again and not needing those fat stores. So if you deprive it of those sugar sources, then it's going to reach for fat to burn as fuel. And when your body's not used to that, that's that really draggy and bonky and kind of nauseous feeling that you get. And that's your body changing over into a different fuel source, which is from carbohydrates to fat burning. Now, once you train your body to do that and you eat properly to get your body to do that, if you can do a combination of both of those, then boom, your body's more used to burning fat and you don't have that lull in the sugar highs and lows. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that? As I know I talk about it all the time, but I know that it can make us more efficient athletes and also generally make you a healthier person as well. So Chris is like, I'll drink to that. I see you. Happy hour.
Sally.
Yes.
Did you just say that you think it's a good idea, like if you're going to do an indoor bike ride in the morning, to not eat before the bike? I mean, I'm assuming if it's not, maybe it doesn't matter the length, but is that what you said? Like like try to not consume anything. Have your coffee with your coconut oil or ghee or whatever and go for
Yeah.
it. Yeah, okay.
And
So-
do that. And yeah, and I like to do it inside, or I like to have you try it inside first, just to make sure, because you might feel a little dizzy when it's blood sugar, it can kind of make you feel kind of sick to your stomach and dizzy. So depending on what your body's used to, what kind of if you're a sugar burner or a fat burner, I'll say, then you may have a little bit of a blood sugar swing. So it's best to be inside. And if you
But
feel
eventually you're not gonna want to do that if you're having
right. Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yes. And yes, thank you for saying that, because I'll clarify that that's not how I would want you to go out and do a race. Absolutely not. This is just like you do zone training in your training. You're not going to go do, I mean, you might, depending on who you are and what your goals are, but let's just say generally, you're not going to go out and do a sprint triathlon in zone 2, but you do a whole lot of training in zone 2 to prepare your body and get your body to be more efficient. But you do that in conjunction with your other training too. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So yes, this is purely for training and to teach your body to be a little bit different kind of a energy burning machine. But on race day, you don't want to deny your body those calories. You definitely want to give your body all the calories it needs and some insurance on race day.
Or even during training, if you have a longer bike or run, you're
Yes.
outside or maybe inside, you're gonna eat.
Yes,
before you start.
absolutely. Yes. No, yes. Thank you for clarifying, because that's for sure. And I will say, okay, if I was going to do an hour run and I was hungry, then I might do, I might just say, oh, I'll just take a gel with me, I'll be fine. But if it was a race and I was running a 10K, then I might take a couple of gels and make sure I eat before. So the calorie intake on training might be a little bit lower than on race day, because race day, we like to have that insurance that we're going to have that nice, steady and solid energy flow. And yes, for sure, calories. Yes.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's see. We have a couple questions. Okay, Shashi, to eat real fruit in the race. Yeah, so orange wedges are great. They have potassium. Bananas, sometimes they're bananas, but it's something to train with, because we've all, I want to say a lot of us have made that mistake. I've made that mistake I get to the run in a half Ironman and they have everything. They have Coca-Cola, they have Red Bull, they have cookies, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of all these gels and everything. I'm going to grab that chocolate chip cookie. And then no, it's like a big cramp in your stomach. So yeah. Good point. And sometimes one orange will make you feel so good. An orange slice, you'll be like, oh, this is the best. I feel so much better. So then you eat another one, and that can be a mistake. If you try it in training and it works, great. But yes,
Downstairs.
They offer so many different things in some of these races that it's hard to resist when you're hungry and everything else tastes crummy. So good question. Just be careful with that. I always say nothing new on race day. I break that rule a lot, but still try to stick to that nothing new on race day and you'll be a little bit safer. Yeah, did I hear another question?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, guys, keep the questions coming. Yeah, Chris?
Well, for people who focus on Olympic distance races,
Yes.
normally on the bike, I'll use water primarily, sometimes some electrolytes, but as a practical matter, I don't really fuel on the bike because it's a relatively short distance, an hour and 15 minutes. And then on the run, kind of mix at aid stations, water and electrolytes. And that seems to work, but I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing for me to be doing.
Well, and so really good point, and this was the next on my list actually, is in each distance of a race, we'll talk about triathlons. And that was a weird noise. We'll talk about triathlons for a minute. So, and yeah, Chris, this is next on my list. So sprint race, I would say breakfast, eat a light breakfast. Transition, meaning when you're setting up your transition and getting things ready, you don't really need any calories, right? Right before the race, in any race, I have the same thing. I do one of the gels that I like that don't have sugar. And it's nice. I mean, they're easy on your stomach. It'll give you a little bit of a base of calories. If you're hungry, then it kind of fills that void and gives you some energy for the swim. So that's what I do. And that's something for you to try too, because and you could try a gel right before a swim workout, just to make sure it settles right in your stomach. And then on race day, maybe you do that. For an Olympic distance, which is going to be a little bit longer, so that one I have a 200 to 300 calorie breakfast. So again, a fairly light breakfast, depending on how early you eat. And maybe you eat earlier and then you have plenty of time to get it out of your system so you can eat a little bit heavier breakfast. And then pre-swim, same thing. I do a gel. On the bike, I would do probably my electrolyte drink. Maybe I'd bring a gel. And what I like to do in an Olympic, so Olympic being a 25-mile bike, is drink my electrolyte drink. And I might have some carbohydrates in my electrolyte drink, or I might have like a couple of gels with me just in case, or choose whatever I like to use that day. And then I get through my bike, and usually the electrolyte drink is plenty, but then I take a gel in at the end of the bike. So that gives me a good solid calorie base, because that time I'm getting kind of hungry. So I'll take a gel or I'll eat a few chews before I go out on the run. And then I like to carry the chews on the run. And yeah, race day, I'm taking in the sugar. So on the run, I carry those Honey Stinger chews. I love them. I like the ones with caffeine. And I just eat a couple of those at a time, and that gets me through the run. I just keep that nice steady flow. I drink the electrolyte drinks and water, depending on what I'm in the mood for, on the aid stations, and then just carry those chews with me. So not a lot of calories, maybe 100 or so with the electrolyte drinks during the whole entire run. And maybe some people might need more. Intensity will definitely play a role. If you had a really strong bike ride where you were pushing into your higher zones, then you're burning a lot more calories. So you might be in more of a deficit. You might need a little bit more for the run. So having the calories with you just in case is a good idea. And then half iron, we kind of double everything. So I'd say 500 calories for breakfast, 100 to 200 calories when you're setting up transition, pre-swim, 100 calories, same thing. So then on the bike, follow the general rule of thumb that we talked about before. So, and it could be anywhere from, let's say, 100 to 250 calories per hour on the bike, depending on you. And that's what we talk about individually. So depending on you and what has worked in training. And then on the run, probably 100 to 150 calories per hour on the run. Ironman similar, but that's another talk. But yeah, so that is really important to know. And I'm glad that Helen brought up the question about not using calories in training, but using calories in racing for sure. I wanted to stress that. And then there are a couple of other items I wanted to share, but these are better actually added to an email. So I'll put these in an email, and it's just some information for you all about some frequently asked questions, we'll say, when I do nutrition talks, such as how much protein does an endurance athlete need? How much, or what do I eat for recovery? There are a lot of different philosophies out there on what you need to eat for recovery, or do you need to eat anything for recovery? So I have some information on that for you. And then also calculating sweat rate. So some people like to have that number, like what's my sweat rate, so I know exactly how much I need to drink. And I'm telling you, the rule of thumb works, but I've had some really, really heavy sweaters that I've coached, and they've done the sweat rate test, and it's almost like there's no possible way they could get enough fluids in their body. So we have to adjust with electrolytes and just hope that there's a lot out on the course for them. So, but it's interesting to read. It's a great article that I have for you all. So, and with that, that's all I have for tonight. Let me see if, okay, here's another, oh, good stuff. Thank you, Helen. And any other quick questions before we wrap up?
Sally, can your Does your body, can you tell the difference when you're in a long run, whether it's, hey, I'm low on fuel or I'm dehydrating?
Oh, good question. Yes. Well, I will say it depends, but usually what happens when you're lower on electrolytes, a couple of different things can happen, or I'll say if you're dehydrated, you may get a muscle cramp in a strange place. Some people, it's IT bands tighten up. Some people, they get a calf cramp, and that's nothing to ignore. So usually that's in the form of cramps, sometimes just dry mouth, and then higher heart rate too when you're dehydrated, and you'll feel crummy. You'll definitely be breathing a little bit harder and out of breath. And so, but that crampy feeling and your muscles tighten up, that's dehydration. Fueling is more of like a draggy feeling, like you just can't push any harder. Dehydration can do that too. But fueling is, yes, you feel like you're just running out of steam. So that's why on race day and in training too, I like to keep a nice steady flow and have a plan per hour of what you're going to take in, so that you just keep that flow of nutrition going, so you don't have those lulls. And you may have them, but that's a good learning experience, right? So if you have them and you feel like you're slowing down, or you feel like you're dehydrated or something cramps up, yeah, calf cramps, quad, even people's quads will cramp up on the bike if they are dehydrated. So we want to prevent that as much as we can, because that can be really tough on race day when things like that start happening. But yeah, good question. I love these questions. Oh, wait, here. Oh, and Helen said, yeah, the salt tabs. So Salt Stick has a product, salt tablets that are chewable. They also have capsules, but I've really grown to like the chewable ones. And those are great just to carry with you on any run or bike. I take those before, and just one of them, they say 2 an hour, or 2 as a serving, and you can take, I don't know, like 6 an hour. But I'll just take like 1 before I go out for my run, and drink some water and stuff like that. But those are great, and just great to carry on any training, run, ride, anything, or even before a swim. So Wednesdays we do, some of you come to the Wednesday workout where we do a track workout first, and then we do a swim. And I will cramp. That's the only time. I rarely cramp in training or racing, but I cramp, my feet cramp up then after I do the run and get in the pool. So I know if I eat a couple of those salt, sometimes just one of those little salt things, I just chew on it. Salt Stick is the brand. You can get them on Amazon too, in all kinds of yummy flavors. But that will prevent cramps for me. So, and electrolytes are great, but make sure you get the water with them. Don't forget the water. So they're not like this magic pill that's going to keep you from needing water. They're not going to hydrate you. They're just going to add to the quality of the water you're taking in. Kind of. I don't know if that's really what I wanted to say, but you know what I mean. They're going to give your body the electrolytes that you need through those fluids, but you need both of them to hydrate. Okay, yeah, and John said he had in his marathons, he got calf cramps. That was likely dehydration. Sometimes it can just be fatigue, but yeah, if they're bad cramps, they could definitely be dehydration. So definitely something that we can control. And I love that. These 2 things, and seriously, it's people will overpace on the bike, and let's just talk about race day. So they'll overdo the bike ride and ride faster than they planned or that they ever did in training, right? On race day. Isn't that silly that we do these things? And then they get off of the bike and they can't run. They're walking, and they're a great runner, but they have to walk most of the or they didn't keep up on the nutrition on the bike because they just didn't feel like it. Right? You can't think like that. You have to stay on the plan. And then when you get to the run, have an awesome run. It's the athlete that finishes with an awesome run that has the best race, because guess what? If you have an awesome run, everything else went right. All of your pacing and nutrition had to go right for that to happen, right? So that's always the goal. So planning for that as you're racing, planning for that, pacing for that, eating and drinking for that. Always focusing on I'm going to have an awesome run at the end. So you're preparing yourself for that run. Let's put it that way. Right? Okay, any other questions? And next week will be fun. So I want you to bring a list of what you've used, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. And then we can talk a little bit more about, I'll bring some other topics in to talk about as well on the same kind of theme of training and racing, fueling and pacing. We can talk, I can do another one on just pacing too. Because that's fun, pacing and training and racing. Because you don't want to be on that training ride and have to get picked up by your significant other, right? Because you try to keep up with your friend. Chris is laughing. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much. And I did remember to record this one, so I'll send it out to you. And I hope you all have a great rest of the evening. And I appreciate you coming. I appreciate all of the questions and input and everything. Yes.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.